Flamer is a graphical sexual story that depicts a boy being forced to ejaculate into a water bottle or drink sperm. Let's Talk About It includes graphic depictions of genitalia, masturbation, oral sex, and anal sex, and encourages children to watch porn, use butt plugs, and send naked pictures to each other. Blankets by Craigman features the main character masturbating onto a piece of paper and using his to create a drawing. Lawn Boy. The book Lawn Boy contains several graphic depictions of 10-year-old children engaging in sex acts. Multiple excerpts from Lawn Boy contain similar disturbing material involving children. The book Shut Up by Marilyn Reynolds contains several references to sex slaves, oral sex, and animals. In the book Identical, father-daughter incest is described in disturbing detail. The book repeatedly includes passages about a father raping his young daughter. Many of the books the media has claimed were banned in Florida are classics that are on the Florida Department of Education's recommended reading list, including The Diary of a Young Girl by Anne Frank, Martin Luther King Jr.'s Letter from a Birmingham Jail, Roberto Clemente, Pride of the Pittsburgh Pirates, references to Rosa Parks, I Am Ruby Bridges, and Romeo and Juliet. All of these books are recommended reading and have been featured as Book of the Month by the Florida Department of Education. Florida, education, not indoctrination.
Wow.
Good morning, great to be back here in Central Florida. I'm joined with our Education Commissioner, Manny Diaz, Orange County School Board Member Alica Farrant, Zuli Bover, did I say that right? Bover, who's a concerned parent and mother of 3 in Orlando and a teacher, and then Tina Deskovich, co-founder of Moms for Liberty. So there was some video that was played that shows one of the reasons why we've worked hard in Florida to empower parents to know what's being put in their children's schools and to be empowered to be able to do something about it when there are things that are clearly not appropriate for school-age children being injected into school. Parents in Florida have a right to send their kids to school knowing that they're going to be educated but not indoctrinated. And so we've provided some very robust protections, stuff you saw. Wow. Parents would bring that up to school board meetings, start reading, and the school board members would say it's too graphic, you can't do that at a school board meeting. Well, if you can't do it at a school board meeting, why are you injecting that into school children's classrooms? I mean, give me a break. Nobody defends what you saw on there. You will not find people that will come and publicly say that that needs to be in their children's school. They won't do that. What they do is they try to create phony narratives. You saw some of the books that, quote, were challenged or that the media ran with, things that are not in any way in violation of any type of Florida law. Things ranging from things like the biography of Roberto Clemente, which not only was something that is welcome, it was actually on the book of the month for the Florida. Challenge the Bible. You've seen people challenge dictionaries, and I'm like, oh my gosh, in Florida, you had a teacher, I think in Bradenton area, that put paper over all the books. Oh, the state law, we're not allowed that. This is fraudulent. But what it is it's trying to obscure the reason why it confused the issue to act like somehow that classic works are somehow not welcome. Nothing could be further from the truth. We want to ensure that that students have very rigorous and robust education. So now what we've seen is you have seen activists that will go and just challenge almost anything. That's not appropriate to be happening. Hijacking this process is not something that we want to encourage in any way. And it's been from different motivations. You know, you have some people that just think some people honestly think a lot of these books are bad, even though they're classics. There's others that are doing it just to try to create a narrative, to try to act like, oh my gosh, these books are under review. And then the media will take that, run with it, and try to act like that there's some debate on whether Florida law requires this or not, which there's not. So this is all theater. This is all performative. And it really has no place in our school system. And so today, I'm proud to be able to direct the Department of Education to take appropriate action to deal with some of the bad actors who are intentionally depriving students of rightful education by politicizing this process. If you take a position as a teacher that no books are appropriate because the state is telling you this, first of all, that's a lie. Second of all, you're depriving students of an ability to achieve what we're trying to do, which is give them a good education. You should not be able to try to create narratives for political purposes and then just kind of keep doing that. No, that's a violation, I think, of your professional obligations. It's a violation of professional duties, and people should be held accountable if they're playing games with our kids' education. So the time for this is really over. We do not want to see that happening. If you want to go up and defend the stuff you saw on that screen, then have the courage to do that publicly and forthrightly. Don't try to do an end run around that when you're really trying to get this stuff in and try to act like, you know, we're concerned about things like To Kill a Mockingbird, which we're not. Obviously, we encourage that. A lot of the things that people have tried to say in the media that were, quote, objected to were actually on the summer reading list for the Florida Department of Education. So this is all, and we shouldn't just sit idly by and let that happen with our kids' education. The other thing we're going to do, and we're going to work with the education, and we're going to work with the legislature on this, is if we want to empower parents, there obviously needs to be some process if you have this type of pornographic materials being injected into schools. Most parents do not want that. They don't think it's appropriate. And then obviously, even aside from whether it's appropriate, are you doing so well on math and science and all these other things that you have the time to be doing this? Give me a break. So we definitely need that. We have to empower parents. At the same time, to just have random people come in who don't even have kids in the school system and just start objecting to things just to try to gum up the works, that is not something that we should be incentivizing in this state. And so I'm working with the legislature to ensure that we're prioritizing the voices of parents, but that you can't just come in and try to throw sand in the gears just to make a political statement. And so I think that there's room for them to what you saw there, which is something that's inappropriate. And we're not going down the road where we hijack this process to advance a political or ideological agenda. And I think if they're able to do that, I think that that'll make it very good going forward. And so, and I think it's also important just to point out the activists and media will sometimes say that, although even that stuff up there that Florida has banned those books are not banned in the state of Florida. They're just not appropriate for school-age children in the state of Florida. If you as an adult believe that those are books that you want to consume, you have every right to do it. They're available. You can purchase them. You can do what you want with them. But adult material is just not appropriate to be putting with our school children. So if that's something that you're interested in, there's no prohibition in the state of Florida, with this adult stuff. I've said, if that's what you're looking for, adult material, I don't care if you're reviewing Hunter Biden's laptop, for Pete's sake. You can do what you, but that's a different question than what ends up in a school and being put in front of our children. So that's just first thing. And there is a movement to ban books in this country, not in the state of Florida. There's a movement, and it's ideological left folks that are trying to get Amazon to ban certain books from even being offered in the first place. The Biden administration was involved in pressuring Amazon. That correspondence just came out within the last week or two. So there is a movement to do that, but just understand, curating a book or not in a library for middle school kids is not the same as saying the book is banned. You have to make decisions about what books you want. I mean, you can have books about Frederick Douglass. There's probably hundreds of books. Maybe you have a half a dozen. That doesn't mean every other book about Douglass is banned. It's just you made a decision about which ones you want to have in that library. So it's a much different thing. But there is a movement to ban books, and a lot of it is books that don't fit an ideological agenda. Books involving things like rejecting gender fluidity and ideology. They just want to bottle that up. They don't want that to be offered on the open marketplace. So there is a threat to this, but it's not coming from the state of Florida. And in fact, Florida opposes what has happened. Now, the reality is even with some of the hubbubaloo that sometimes gets put out there in the media, what people in our school districts are doing in Florida is basically what they've always done. They're ensuring that materials are age and grade appropriate. In fact, 42 counties in Florida have had zero issues with any books or any curriculum since our curriculum transparency law went into effect. So that tells you people are using common sense. When they see something like this, most places in Florida are just simply rejecting it and saying, of course, that's not appropriate to be able to have in school for young kids. So we are going to continue to stand for the rights of parents. We want to make sure that they're empowered to be able to do, but don't let these folks pull a fast one on you. Don't let them indulge in phony narratives. And I mentioned a couple, this Roberto Clemente, that was on the book of the month for the Department of Education in Florida. That was not and there's nothing in Florida law that says that book is inappropriate for anybody. You also heard about Anne Frank. Not only is Anne Frank something that is not in any way problematic, that was on the Florida Department of Education's official reading list. People have also tried to claim things like To Kill a Mockingbird and Romeo and Juliet. Again, that's false. Those are things that have always been taught and always will. So these examples go on. A lot of that is being done for political purposes. And I think what we're going to do is just say, okay, let's have a process here where we're not trying to invite this nonsense, where we're focusing on what's good for kids. And those that would try to deprive students of potentially reading some of these classic books just because you have a political axe to grind, you're putting the students last, and that's wrong. That's not what this is all about. The whole purpose of the schools is to put the students first and to make sure that we give them a great opportunity to have a great education. So I'm pleased that we've had parents that have exercised their rights. I think if you look at what was on that screen, again, I haven't heard anybody justify that any of that stuff is appropriate for school kids. Now, I've not heard one person make that argument. What I hear is a lot of roundabout and a lot of fake narratives But I haven't heard anyone actually stand up and justify that and show why that is a good use of resources and why that's appropriate. And so when parents see that, obviously we want them to be empowered to be able to ensure that their schools are focusing on educating their kids, but not subjecting them to an indoctrination. And I know folks in the state level have been working. Manny's been very proactive. You know, some of these folks are virtue signaling if they're trying to create phony narratives. You know, we've had folks that have fought back. You had this incident in Miami where they did some permission slip for that. It was absurd. There's nothing in state required that. The State Board of Education immediately wrote a letter to the principal, said, knock it off, stop with the nonsense. So I appreciate that a lot of folks at the state level have been proactive. I appreciate that a lot of our school board members around the state have been very proactive. And then, of course, a lot of parents throughout the state have done a really good job in holding folks accountable. So we're going to hear from some more folks today. So we're going to start with our Education Commissioner, Manny Diaz.
Thank you, Governor, and thank you all. Good morning. Thank you for being here. Events like this are so important because we need to set the record straight. As the governor mentioned, there are many people who claim that Florida is banning books. But let me be clear, we don't ban books. Authors write, publish, sell their books in Florida, like every other state. However, not every book is appropriate for our children. I don't know why the media continues to claim we are banning books. Even the Associated Press, who's clearly not aligned with this administration, had to come out with an article to admit that Florida does not ban the book To Kill a Mockingbird. Then you have certain districts who are trying to politicize this issue. Hillsborough County tried to restrict kids from being able to read Romeo and Juliet by Shakespeare, as the governor mentioned. And this is absolutely absurd because it's included in the recommended reading list for books. The whole issue is about protecting kids and keeping these inappropriate materials out of our schools. That's what we should be doing. We should be providing our students with a curated list of books that is good for their education and is not inappropriate. Parents asked for a way to be able to object to inappropriate materials, and this governor stood up and did what he said on day one. He given the parents that process. Because of Governor DeSantis' leadership, parents have a real process and communities have a real process to look at what the materials are in schools and deem what is inappropriate. When I'm out visiting schools and get the opportunity to speak to parents, so many of them thank us and thank the governor for having this process in place to actually have access to what's available in school, transparency, and have the ability to object. So today we're here to set the record straight, and we'll continue to set the record straight as long as it takes. In Florida, we always support a process that protects parents' rights and protects children. Both are important, and here in Florida, that is exactly what we have done. This process is designed to prevent activists from inserting inappropriate materials into our children's classroom. Get the school board to allow a book called Shut Up, a sexually graphic book that they want to make available to kids. I've seen and read parts of this book, and I can tell you that as commissioner, and more importantly as a father, I would never want my children exposed to this kind of graphic, inappropriate material with sexual language. It's not going to happen under the watch of this governor. Parents who object to inappropriate materials in schools, thank you, Governor, for your leadership on protecting our kids and making sure that our education continues in the right path. We will focus on literacy, mathematics, civics, and overall high-quality teaching, as the governor mentioned. The topic of literacy is especially on my mind following a successful Celebrate Literacy Week, where we celebrated and reading, and I read to students at the Capitol with members of our leadership staff. So much good work, great work is happening in literacy around the state, and that's not talked about because the media is busy talking about book banning. So the New Worlds Reading Initiative, which provides books to pre-K through 5th grade students directly to their homes, along with resources for parents to encourage reading with their children. So again, Florida is not banning books. We've actually mailed over 4.3 million books directly to children so they have access to literacy. We have state regional literacy directors who are boots on the ground, out and about in our schools to help improve instruction and ultimately help our kids be able to read. Governor, I also, as you mentioned, released my book of the month, which includes 5 quality books each month to promote literacy and reading in K-12 schools. I highlight authors and titles, which give students the opportunity to read books at school or at home with their families. Oftentimes, we use this list to dispel the media's book ban narrative. Some examples that were mentioned by the governor: Roberto Clemente book, the Ruby Bridges book, Anne Frank and Romeo and Juliet. Not only are they not banned, they were on millions of dollars to improve literacy, including allowing districts to purchase high-quality reading curriculum, provide professional development, and provide additional literacy support for students before and after school. Thanks to the governor, we have a high school tutoring program where juniors and seniors can tutor students in K through third grade to help them become better readers. That is what we should be focusing on, and not this fraud narrative that we are banning books. I could go on and on, but let me stop there and say you can see that under this governor's leadership, we've had a major focus on literacy. And you have my commitment as commissioner. We will always keep our focus on education and not indoctrination. Thank you very much.
And then also the proof's in the pudding. I mean, we are, I think on the NAEP, we're what, number 3 in fourth grade reading in America. Florida. We were not number 3 in fourth grade reading 25 years ago in Florida. We are now, and if you control for demographics, we're number 1 by far. I mean, we're a big, diverse state. The states that are ahead of us are much smaller and less diverse. And so we've been able to do that because we have placed an emphasis on this, which I think is really, really good. And we're going to continue to do that. And that, yeah, if you'll necessarily be successful, but if you're not reading up to par by fourth grade, the chance of you becoming successful goes down dramatically. That's just what we found in research, and that's pretty consistent. Okay, Alicia.
Good morning. Thank you, Governor DeSantis, for this opportunity to be here and for your courage, your courageous stance to protect the innocence of our children. My name is Alica Farrant. I love explicit sexual content, including graphic drawings of sexual acts in my children's public high school and throughout the public schools here in Orange County. I soon realized that the process that was in place to report these books did not, instead of sitting around and complaining about change, I decided to take a stand and be the change. I stand before you today not only as a mother of 5 children, but now as an elected school board member for Orange County. As a school board passed by our legislator and this governor, DeSantis. These policies bring educational transparency and protect the innocence of our public school children. They help parents like myself, media specialists, and teachers weed out this type of inappropriate content. You would think it would be common sense to remove sexually explicit material from our public schools, but I have quickly realized that common sense is not that common. The narrative being pushed is that parents are banning any book based on race, religion, or gender, but that is simply not true. The media and extreme left-wing groups want you to believe that we are trying to ban and remove, like, let's talk about it, which is completely sexually explicit and graphic, teaching our kids. They want you to believe that we are removing books, such as been told already, identical, which gives detailed graphics accounts of a young girl being molested without your knowledge. I'm proud of the direction we're headed here in Orange County, and I will not allow this false narrative to hinder what we're doing to protect the innocence of our public school children. This book ban hoax is nothing more than political propaganda designed to bring confusion and division. What we are seeing here in our country is perverting the innocence of children, pushing sex, perversion, and inappropriate content younger and younger. When we look at the big picture of this, isn't so much about books. This battle is between good and evil that is targeting our children. And I believe the only way to steer us back is found in 2 Chronicles 7:14. If my people, who are called by my name, will humble themselves and pray and seek my face, then I will hear from heaven and I will heal their land.
Jesus.
Don't let fear stand between you and courage.
Never.
Let's rise up together and courageously protect our kids.
Florida, somehow they don't want there to be books about racism or something. First of all, we are required to teach a couple of years ago to say we're not going to do critical race theory, which is basically saying inaccurate things about the American Revolution. It's treating people, even students, treating them differently based on their skin color. That's not what we want in this state. But then they will say not having critical race theory means somehow you're not going to talk about historical facts. And in fact, in our CRT bill to get rid of CRT, we required even stronger historical instruction on racial discrimination throughout American history. So we want the facts to be taught, but we don't want history to be used and bastardized to be able to advance a modern day ideological objective. That's not the appropriate for our schools. And so if anyone says, oh, you can't do a book about Hank Aaron because it talks about how he overcame prejudice, not in the state of Florida. There's nothing prohibiting that today. That would be great. We'd have a lot of really good things to happen. So that's just a way that I think a lot of the media is very dishonest too, because they will conflate not having CRT, which is an ideological project that people are trying to impose on students, with historical rendering of things like racial discrimination and injustices. And those are not at all the same thing. And you can absolutely be faithful to history and the facts without going down the road of ideology and trying to promote that agenda. Okay, Tina, come on up.
Thank you, Governor. We are so blessed to live in the great state of Florida, where we have a governor who protects children and defends parental rights, and a commissioner that is focused on literacy. Many states in our country are not doing either of those things right now. So thank you both gentlemen so much. It's I came here today just to say one thing, and that is enough. We've had enough of this. In Florida, even with these great two leaders, it's higher than the national average. But what about the 60% of students in Florida that can't read proficiently? Nationwide, 21% of Hispanic students can read. 17% of Black students are reading proficiently. So I came here to say enough. We have a crisis in America in public education. And you, the media in the back of the room and around this country, all you can do is be obsessed with book bans that are not happening. We, the parents, have had enough. Tiffany and I, my co-founder, have done hundreds of interviews this past year on book bans. We take every one of them. We know it's a trap. We know they're calling us up to try to trap us, to say that we are extremists, that we are banning books. We bring the books that parents are concerned about. We show the pictures, we read the passages, and do you know what happens? They won't show the books. Legally, they can't show the books. 60 Minutes came to Brevard County. Scott Pelley flew down and a whole team. They interviewed Tiffany and I for over an hour about the books. We read the books, we showed the books. We talked about literacy in America. It's been 5 months. The show's been pushed and pushed with Scott Pelley. Where is it? Show the books. We, the parents, are done with this. It's time to teach kids to read. And here in Florida, so many programs you just listed have been put in place to help kids to read. But it takes more than Commissioner Diaz. It takes more than good teachers in good schools and communities. It takes everybody in this state and in this country to care about this issue. Media, step up. Cover the fact that we are in a literacy crisis. This is the future of our kids and our country. And that's all I have to say today. Enough.
Wow.
Did you guys do your own video of the 60 Minutes interview? Okay. Okay, yeah, because they will absolutely splice that to try to make you look as bad as possible, and they were not coming down to Brevard County.
So good morning, my name is Zuli Boberg, and I come to you today not only as a parent, but as an educator with 20 years of experience, 18 of which have been right here in our district at Orange County Public Schools. 1 year ago, my daughter, a 9th grade student at Timber Creek High School, one of the highest performing high schools in our district, came to me about an assignment she felt uncomfortable completing. At the time, she was enrolled in an early childhood education class where she would study the growth and development in preschool children. She had been so excited for the opportunity to one day be able to work with the preschool children that participate in the program at the high school that she is attending. The graded assignment the students were tasked with was to complete a book summary on the novel Shut Up, where there is a partition that separates it from a higher level early education class, and then a third partition that separates the preschool students. After reading the story myself in its entirety, I found it is filled with sexually explicit content. The story gives very detailed descriptions on the sexual acts that are performed by an adult male on a 4th grade boy. Jesus. In the 24 different scenes in the book, there was not a simple description that insinuates abuse. It's the actual acts being described and out on video using the exact narrative used in the story. It would be rated mature, or actually not produced at all because of its pornographic nature, read aloud to them by their teacher. While there are mandates that prohibit viewing videos of any kind at any Orange County Public Schools high school with a rating above PG-13 or TV-14, there was no censorship considered on the content of this book while it was read aloud by the team of abuse. I have never been exposed to the content in this story. Students do not need a vivid and emotional account of the act of child sexual abuse to understand the role of a mandatory reporter, or for them to understand the trauma that young children may experience. I, along with the other over 100 families, was not given the opportunity to say no. As much as I censor what my kids are exposed to at home, I could not protect them from being exposed to sexually explicit content at school because I wasn't made aware that it was going to be a part of the curriculum. The teacher admitted to using this book as part of her curriculum for 8 years.
Wow.
Parents, don't trust that they have your child's best interest at heart. Sadly, we learned the book will be okay. The description on this book gives you no inclination that sexual acts dealing with molestation are just daughter, but also for all of the parents that weren't given the opportunity to choose and were not informed of what their student had been exposed to. I'm also standing for all of the students who were too afraid to speak up and say that they felt uncomfortable because they were afraid to go up against their teacher, who they admired and looked up to, especially the ones who may have had to relive their own traumas after having to listen to this book being read aloud in class. Sadly, in a lot of cases like this, the students are the ones that feel the most shame for coming forward. I hope that we can do right by our students and show them that this kind of content will not be tolerated in any of our schools. So thank you, Governor DeSantis, for standing up for parents' rights, for protecting our students from sexually explicit materials in our classrooms, and for showing my daughter that her voice was heard.
Oh my.
Well, we appreciate that, and look, what you just heard there, I don't think anyone would justify how that could be trained before we started the press conference. So we know that, and so this just process shines light on that, and empowers parents, and then we can focus on actually getting to the business of education, which is really what our task is. Now, on the abuse of this, both with what DOE is going to do, as well as hopefully working with the legislature, I really hope that could put an end to the game, any of these classic works in a school setting. These books have been there for generations. That would be appropriate for the state to do, but it's certainly not what the state has done. And as Manny said, these are books that have been recommended reading by the state for quite some time, whether on the summer reading list or whether on Book of the Month. So that is, I think, that's the policy. And if people are abusing this process to try to muddy those waters, then we need to have some reforms. We should absolutely, I mean, if somebody is illegitimately, as an educator, they're illegitimately withholding class, but you are doing a disservice to those kids, and you should absolutely be held accountable for playing these games. Likewise, members of the community, although we like people wanting to be involved in what's going on, to just show up and object to everything that occasionally. You should not be reviewing dictionaries and encyclopedias and just basic things that have been a part of education for a long time. So I think that this is going to get it to where it needs to be. We obviously have to give parents the ability to be able to ensure that this smut doesn't get into their schools. I don't know why we even got to this point where people would want to inject this into the schools. Unfortunately, it's happening, and I think a lot just in the last 4 or 5 years, there's been a real great awakening across this country about some of the things that are going on in public schools. In Florida, we've been very proactive to empower parents, not so much in some other states. And a lot of this is now becoming the norm. So that's, I think, bad that they're doing that. We're doing the right thing, but let's not let people try to hijack the process. We don't have any time for your political agenda. If you're saying that no books should be available, that's on you. You are acting inappropriately. You are not acting in a professional manner, and there should be consequences if you're going to do that. So I look forward to what the Department of Education is able to put out to make sure that we have adequate accountability. And I also look forward to working with the legislature so we can streamline this. Let's focus where the energy needs to be, and let's not waste our time playing political games over works that everybody knows are an important part of kids' education. Okay, with that, happy to take some questions. Yes, sir.
Governor, you talk about accountability and taking action against people who are trying to politicize this process. What kind of action would that be?
So, for example, with objecting, like you go to a school board meeting objecting, if you have a kid in school, okay, but if you're somebody who doesn't have a kid in school and you're going to object to 100 books, no, I don't think that that's appropriate. So I think the legislature is interested in limiting what the number of challenges you can do, and maybe making it be contingent on whether you actually have kids in school or not. On the one hand, I think that does make sense. On the other hand, people that don't have kids in school pay taxes to support the school system. So the citizens do have an interest in this. So I'm not sure you can say they can't do it at all, Bird. Or Hank Aaron, that obviously is a frivolous objection. Those books should be in school. Then maybe after 1 or 2 frivolous objections, you have to pay a fine because you're putting people to go through all this. So we're toying with a lot of things in terms of that process. But then also the legislature is looking at, or Manny is looking at, if you have somebody within the school system that's doing something for political purposes. For example, there was a teacher, I think in Manatee County, that papered over every book in the class. Oh, I can't show, but that's a lie. That is not true. That is performative nonsense. If you want to do that on your own time, fine, but don't bring that to the classroom and subject our kids to that nonsense. So I think that there can be professional responsibility that's imposed in those situations. And, look, it's those books, I think clearly are a problem we could disagree with. And here's the thing. The state of Florida is not mandating that books are taken out or not from circulation. Even those books, it's got to be age or developmentally appropriate, but ultimately the people in the school system are going to make those final decisions. So you may have school, that may happen. We just want to make sure that we're not trying to incentivize frivolous objections or any type of games being played, and that people know if you're saying that you want to take something out of circulation from being in a middle school classroom, that's not a frivolous thing. I mean, that's a significant thing. In these instances, obviously it's justified, but to go after some of these classic works like that, that's an agenda, and that's not what we should have in the schools. Yes.
Governor DeSantis, you have spoken out against the woke agenda of gender fluidity, and you've also come out against gender affirming care. So I was hoping you could square your opposition to gender affirming care and people choosing their own gender identity with your frequent wearing of lifts and you hoping to choose your own height identity.
Nice try. Next.
You're a
Yeah,
disgrace.
You kind of mentioned it a little bit earlier. Can you expand on your take on the permission slips down in Broward County?
It was I think it was Miami.
Yeah.
So it was, yeah, I mean,
If possible, Mr.
Amanda,
Diaz,
you wanna address the permission slip issue?
Yeah, and it's very clear, there was a letter written from the chair of the state board clarifying the issue. African-American history is required instruction. Black History Month is required instruction. There's no permission slip required for required instruction. Those permission slips have to do with field trips, extracurricular activities, those kind of activities where parents should be aware and notified. Part of our parent rights laws say that. So that was wrongly done at that school. Superintendent has been advised, principal was written a letter by the state board chair, and it's being addressed. But this is another example where the governor has talked about with the books, it's the same thing, politicizing African American history or celebrate Black History Month. It's absurd.
All right, well, thanks, everybody. We look forward to making some progress on this. God bless everybody.
So friends, that's going to be it. I will see y'all later. I'm gonna explain, lots to talk about. I'll see y'all then. Bye.
You're so good. How you doing?